So welcome to another episode of the ACRN Health Podcast. And today we want to discuss quite an important and interesting topic, which is from trials to industry, building Africa's life sciences ecosystem. To unpack this important topic, I'm joined by two very distinguished gentlemen, two very important people whose profiles are so big and so long that I will not bother to go into it. I'll kindly ask them to introduce themselves. So today I am joined by Prof Brighton Samatanga, as well as Prof Collen Masimirembwa. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And in the spirit of being an African, because I'm with profs, I claim the honorary title of professor. So that I also...
You're welcome.
And at your own peril.
At my own peril. So maybe we'll start with you, Prof Samatanga, just to give us a brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks for welcoming me to this event. So I'm a molecular biophysicist. So I'm interested in anything molecular across the different sciences, be it clinical, veterinary. I think the universe is more or less similar down there. So I did my studies in Germany and Switzerland, both bachelor's, master's, PhD, and I had my professorship there in Germany as well. And then I later came here, and then that's when I sort of launched the Biotech Institute, where I'm the CEO right now.
Fantastic. We'll talk about the Biotech Institute in a little bit. Prof Masimirembwa, just a brief introduction. Very brief, because Prof's bio is extensive.
No, well, thank you very much. It's nice to be here and talking about things to do with life science development on the African continent. So my background is in biochemistry, and really then I linked it a lot with pharmacology. So all my work is in biochemical pharmacology, understanding biochemical pathways and molecules that end up being medicines. And I trained at the University of Zimbabwe for my BSc and for my master's and my first PhD. Then I went to Sweden and did a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics. Thereafter, I joined the pharmaceutical industry, worked for AstraZeneca pharmaceutical company. And that really shaped my interest in how can Africa participate in drug discovery and development. And hence, this discussion is of interest to me.
Oh, fantastic. So what is interesting is from both your profiles, you went to school, you did this, came back home, and now you have set up something. When we grew up, the traditional trajectory would be someone who's in academia kind of stays in academia. So I'm very interested in, as you introduce the Biotech Institute, tell us what it does and what's that all about.
Yeah, I think it's part of it for me is philosophical. A redefinition of academia per se, as you call it. I think the kind of academic life I experienced as a professor or postdoc in Europe, wherever it was, I think that was not the kind of, I didn't find enthusiasm in it. So you have to apply for grants, you have a lot of lack of future opportunities, you can't quite see clearly, of course, you're married in the end. So the lot of sustainability. So for me, the idea was to create something that is self-sustaining. That's why you find we're in academic space, but we actually have never had a grant since the institute was created.
Really?
Yes. We have actually managed to sort of generate our own income, fund our own research, do it at our own terms for how long we want to do it, and stop when we want to stop, right? So what we have managed was to embed, to work in this sector of translational research. So we basically have embedded sort of application with research.
With research, yes.
So what we have in terms of the application space, so we have like a clinical diagnostics laboratory, right, fully functional. We have a food testing lab that is actually undergoing ISO 17025 certification. We will have assessment this April.
Okay.
We set up next generation sequencing,
Okay.
right? We do a lot, mostly in the oncology space. So we do work a lot with oncologists and so forth. We now have a clinic
Okay.
on our side, and we do other stuff. But you see that all these kind of things, because we are working in the oncology space, we have the big data from patients. Once we do all the knowledge and inform them on informed consent, we can actually look at the biomarkers, we can look at that data. You understand? We are working in the clinical diagnostic space. We have developed our own lab information management system for that. We are working with our own software.
Right.
So we are developing, so it's like we have sort of embedded our research topics within our own ecosystem. So we do all these things embedded inside. So, but we do quite a lot. And right now the next project will be, I think we'll be doing a blood donation and transfusion center, but also looking more into the hematological malignancy space. So we can still get blood, but we can also research into blood, because this is a space that no one is
really looking into.
And we do a lot of contract research now for companies. So a company, a manufacturer X is producing, I don't know, beans or whatever. They have a certain test that they want to do for quality control. We can develop that.
Okay.
So this is how we have sort of embedded things. But we also have some dedicated research projects that we have, that we've done an AMR project. We have done some bioprospecting projects. We've done a number of things.
Okay. So it looks like you can't really run away from your first love of research as a professor.
Yes, I think I love research, and I think research will always be a key component of how I think or how I do things. But I always thought research has to be sustainable.
Yes.
In a way that I don't have to wait for someone to allow me to do something, or I have to wait for the grant to come out, or for somebody to think a certain topic is important for me to start looking at it.
Yes.
So we don't necessarily publish everything, because we don't simply also research to publish. We research to develop.
Okay. So many interesting concepts, which I think we'll unpack as we go. But I think one of the ones that resonate a lot with us as a network is the issue of sustainability of research. So Prof Masimirembwa, over to you again around, your training. You come back home, you set up this institution. Tell us a little bit of what that's like and what AiBST is all about.
Thank you. So for me, life in academia didn't look very exciting.
Okay.
Maybe partly because I didn't quite see how one was going to end up with a product or a service they could offer people, at least in the setting I was at that time. So quickly after my postdoc, I joined AstraZeneca pharmaceutical company. And I really felt at home. This is a place where people were passionate about, discovering and developing products. And with the patient in mind. Of course, there's always the overarching business model around it, that it has to be profitable and so forth. But on a day-to-day basis, you are thinking about how we can address a particular disease and how teams are formed and how they work, religiously to find those solutions, and how the failure is handled. Because failure is the order of the day. Okay. But how you recover and pivot and go in a different way. So after working there for about 10 years, in fact, by the 5th year, I had already started to say, right now in Africa, there is no product in the pharmacy or any medical product that was discovered and developed in Africa by an African person. Okay. That was just it. It turned everything around for me. Okay. And when I was in meetings, Africa was always like a shadow. It was not even a market for the products that were there. And there was no activity there to produce the products. So for me, I just ambitiously thought that this is my responsibility to do this. And I remember very well that in 2002, that's when I started to put together ideas around to form a research center in Africa that would develop products. So already it was products.
Okay.
And it was not so easy to do, but nevertheless, I resigned from my position, and I was back in Zimbabwe, and what we wanted to do first was to discover drugs. But initially, at first I realized that there were not actually people who were skilled to do that. There was no infrastructure to do that. So actually I went back to the drawing board. How do we train people in translational sciences? So we started to train a lot. And I was quite happy to hear that one of the young people was one of the people I trained when they were in high school, because I went as far as the high school to try to change the mindset into how do you do translational science? Don't just do science for the sake of just knowing what is in textbooks. So we formed the AiBST, the African Institute of Biomedical Science and Technology, first to train people in translational sciences and to make them have access to industry standard laboratory facilities. And then to try to create a mentorship framework with the people in the established industry. So for the past 24 years now, the African Institute of Biomedical Science and Technology has been developing training material that we believe is producing translational scientists who are now starting their own projects. So I'm always happy when I see people from AiBST that have started companies. But we have also been saying, how do we develop products? So now we have at least one product on the market, which is a genetic test that helps doctors to know which drugs to prescribe and how to prescribe them. So we are so much into developing diagnosis. They are a bit lower hanging fruits compared to coming up with the drugs or vaccines. So we found that the diagnostic space was a place to be. But in the drug space, we have also been looking at repurposing of medicines, trying to look at understanding the pathways which drugs are working, and then trying to see whether they can be used now for things that are of problems on the African continent. But we quickly also realized that if the research is far away from the consumer or the patient, or if it is far away from the regulators, it takes long to be seen. So that's when we started to think about clinical trials. Because clinical trials are at the interface of all the drug discovery and development work and the patient. So we set up the phase 1 clinical trial unit at Chitungwiza Hospital. And we have conducted more than 10 or so clinical studies there, and working together with both local interested parties and also the pharmaceutical companies in the global north. And I think we demonstrated that amongst our partnerships here, we can actually do clinical trials. And it's phase 1. And I believe that we have now, as AiBST, tried to have the whole value chain from discovery of diagnostics or repurposing of medicines, all the way to clinical testing. And now the challenge is deployment. So I think that's what our institute is doing. So it is an arm which is for training, to make sure that we have a sufficient critical mass of highly skilled translational scientists. Number 2, to build to have the infrastructure, which is an open lab, where any scientist with a clever idea can access our platforms. And then we do our own research on the same platforms and the products. So that's what the African Institute of Biomedical Science and Technology is all about. But most importantly, we believe in partnerships. Already we have a partnership with you. So really that is what AiBST is all about, but I can talk in detail about some of the aspects of this initiative.
I just want to add one point. I think when I came, one of the main things I wanted to do at the Biotech Institute, I'm an RNA person. My research is on alternative splicing. Basically, that's my space. So my actually dream was to work on RNA therapeutics.
That's interesting.
So we had sort of a low-hanging fruit to start with easier projects and so forth that actually, like he said, like the stuff that is available can actually manage. They can't handle RNA. I understood this from the very beginning. So we had some more DNA-aligned projects. But in the long term, what I actually want to do is to develop RNA-based drugs, biologics, that kind of space. That's my research area. That's who I am when I'm actually talking about me as a researcher. I'm an RNA person. So I've also worked on CRISPR-Cas and published on this one, the gene editing, so which won the Nobel Prize. So these are the things that are actually, when I'm talking about me doing research, this is the space that we'll be talking about. But the framework to research, to create and develop something in that space right now, it needs time. For now, we need to train and get competency of stuff to that. There's a lot of bioinformatics involved. There's a lot of molecular biology involved. There's a lot of skill set that is needed.
So I was going to ask quickly, Prof Masimirembwa, when did you actually set up AiBST? When did you open doors, so to speak? What year was that?
So, well, a little bit of history helps there to answer that question. I registered AiBST in 2002. That time I was still working for AstraZeneca. Yeah.
Right.
And at that time I took 7 of my colleagues and we organized the first course on drug discovery. And we did it in Cape Town.
Okay.
And after that, the excitement from the young people just told me that this is possible to do. So in 2000, so then from 2002, I started to, amass the technologies that I needed and ship them in a couple of containers. And when the containers came, I didn't have a place to put them. So all my relatives who had garages or any spare room, there were HPLC machines there, there were plate readers and, even a DNA sequencer was sitting in some garage. And I started to look for a space because I couldn't get space in the institutions that were there. Because that time, they did not believe in translational science. Most of the institutions were believing they are there for academic purposes.
Okay.
So in 2004, that's when I secured a place where I could now renovate the place to meet my standards. So in 2004, that's when we had the things in a proper lab space. Yeah. So 2004. So we basically now we are in 2026.
Prof Samatanga, when doors opened for the Biotech Institute?
Yeah, I think for me, I think it's also quite interesting because to sort of put into frame how it all started. But during COVID. Well, during COVID, you could work from home. So I left Germany and came here to work from home. And it was during COVID. And I think there was also one of the major push factors then was like, it was always like, I wanted to do this. I've always wanted to create the institution. But the question was to find the actual time point, which is say, okay, now I make the shift.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And then during COVID, I think it was a weird disease that nobody knows what's going on. Everybody was trying to figure it out. Everybody closed their borders. And I felt like, you know what? I may be one of those people who might actually be able to contribute in the Zimbabwean space to actually do something about it. So that's actually, during COVID is when I actually started the Biotech Institute. So 2019, 2020, I registered 2019. So we are a very young institution. We've grown very fast, but we are much, much younger than the AiBST, for instance. And then 2020, that's when I was bringing in a lot of equipment. And remember, it was COVID time. I would come, I'd get quarantined, 7 days in quarantine, take out my equipment from the airport, set up a little bit. I had one scientist who just managed. My father actually would pick some of the stuff. And I found some space where I would just put it. And then I'll go back, get quarantined, and then wait for that another moment. So it was a really not so optimal time to actually sort of develop kind of this this institute. And then when we had, I think around end of 2020, then this was also come to the regulatory framework. I didn't quite understand the regulatory framework. Right. And then I understood that the only people who were allowed to work in the lab were medical laboratory scientists. Apparently we needed a permission. I misunderstood it, actually, because you only have to be registered if you're doing clinical diagnostics. Oh. So I didn't get, my initial employees were not like a co-researcher, like biochemistry or something like that. They were like a medical laboratory scientist. So of course, the guys pushed the whole direction into medical laboratory sciences. So before I knew it, I had a clinical diagnostics lab. I was like, okay. And then, but it was a good thing, because what the person made me understood was, and which was the naivety of it, I was a naive scientist, was I had the passion to do science, but you couldn't generate income. Okay. So one of the things that we said, okay, clinical diagnostics can generate income. Yes. And COVID was also happening. So we actually, one of the equipment we started was to do COVID testing. COVID testing. Yes. So we brought up a very innovative machine where we could do a PCR in like 15 to 20 minutes. Wow. Yeah, but up to then, no one sort of knew that it could happen. It could happen, yes. All right. So all the big labs were saying, okay, basically we are lying. We are running antigen tests. So what we used to do is we would run the COVID test. It's finished in 15 to 20 minutes, yes. And then we will let it sit for like 40 minutes so that we have enough time. Because the benchmark, we are like the major labs, whatever. So these were the benchmarks because we are not known. the non-people were saying, you cannot do this. So, and then after that, that's when we got into the sequencing, because we wanted to sequence COVID.
Okay.
All right. And then we were trying to get sequence COVID, and then we did a little bit of stuff in that space. And then we moved more into oncology, because now I was really beginning to understand what it means or what it entails. And then we began to move into oncology. So I think we grew very fast. So I think 2020 was a bit more COVID. 2021 was COVID until it ended. Then we moved into clinical diagnostics with a bit more research, which is aligned to that space. We tried to develop diagnostic kits. Like we are on kits for DNA extraction and on some specific diseases from some eye disorders with some partnerships with the people from HIT. Like him, I had a problem with space.
Oh.
I had a really big problem with space. But we managed to, so at one point, I was in SciCard in Avondale West. But because there was COVID and the landlord saw a lot of people outside, they hiked the rent so much. So we couldn't pay for it anymore. No. So we had another site which we just opened in partnership with Cellmed. It's one of the insurance companies. So basically we had the partnership there. So then we moved as much as we could into that very small lab, and all the rest of the stuff actually had to go to my apartment in the garage. And then it was like sort of frozen for a while until we had a much bigger place. So research sort of stopped for a while. Okay. And then we had a much bigger place than we could actually start. Then we could do, in the meantime, a lot of applied stuff, like really condense as much as we could, but also then focus mostly into bioinformatics related research space. And now we have a much bigger place now in Avon Mount Pleasant. So we have 4,000 square meters. We have a much bigger space. So we could do more labs. We can have a clinic there. We can do food testing and whatever. So we can really expand. But I think, like he says, I think, this is how sort of the trajectory sort of happened. And this is where we are.
Yeah, see, this is the problem.
I've skipped a lot of things, but nevertheless.
No problem. This is the problem when you're talking to professors.
And we got robbed. This is the most important thing.
You did?
In 2022, in September, we lost a lot of our equipment because we had a break-in, and then we got robbed, and then we had to start afresh. Ooh. Yeah. So somebody steals a computer or a TACMAN machine with PCR, but they don't even know how they're going to use it.
Yeah.
And then we had to start afresh.
So maybe... I was going to say, I had a set of questions in an order, but now...
I'm sorry.
Because so when we hear these stories, and as you narrate this, it sounds simple and easy. That, it sounds like it's easy to do, but I want us to get into a little bit of some of the challenges or headwinds that you see in setting up the institutions that you have, and in actually making the transition from scientist, researcher into this space where you're also an entrepreneur, a founder, a CEO, a business owner. just what have you found?
Yeah, so when you have a vision, it sounds so nice in your head.
Yeah.
And also when you communicate it, you even believe it more. And this kind of makes you make decisions which you can sometimes regret, but I'm happy that I still believe I made the right decisions.
Yeah.
I mean, because everybody says to me, well, you were on an incredible trajectory in one of the major pharmaceutical companies, and you now come back to Zimbabwe, you have no job assurance of any form, and you don't want to go to the university to teach. You want to start your own thing, and you have no sense about where you're going to get the money and where you're going to get the people to do the kind of things you want to do. So that already, as I alluded to, when I then came on the ground, it was clear that there was no infrastructure to even accommodate me. And there was no business that had an appetite for what I wanted to do.
Oh, right.
So, and like what he has indicated, that he wanted to come and do RNA. But when I came, I had all this knowledge in genetics. I had all this knowledge in medicinal chemistry. But what I realized that people wanted to know is DNA testing for HIV. They wanted viral loads. They wanted CD4 counts. I found myself doing all those type of which from a scientific point of view are not the most challenging or daring kind of things you would do. But those things were appreciated.
Exactly.
And they actually made people believe that we are important to the whole ecosystem for healthcare. So we started to do a lot of viral loads. We were doing contract for the big companies because they would send us they would get samples from patients and they would give them to us. We run and we give them the results and they put them on their letterheads and things like that, which is still okay. It's business. It's business. So we did a lot of things that were not core business.
Okay.
In the beginning, that was the only way we could survive. And the real thing we wanted to do was to look for drug targets. The real thing we wanted to know was to understand the genetic diversity of African populations, as we thought that it was an opportunity for innovation, for discoveries. And so at the same time, we realized that the equipment which we had, all the DNA sequencers, the mass specs and the HPLCs, they could be used. So we actually helped the government to do some toxicology analysis for some foods. And I was not in the food sector, but I had to do aflatoxin assays to try to understand what is happening. In the DNA, we were doing all this DNA testing in children born to HIV positive mothers. And later on, we actually also ended up doing all the forensic DNA testing. We were the first ones to introduce it in the country.
Okay.
I was not a forensic scientist, but I know how to look at DNA sequences. So we actually introduced. So looking back, I'm beginning to think that it is also important to relate to the actual needs of the environment you're operating in. Yes. Because there was no DNA testing in the country, we were able to introduce it. And now there are many labs which are able to introduce it. Yes. Because people were now moving from other immunoassays to DNA tests. We introduced most of the DNA testing in those early days in the early 2000s. And most of the young people in the medical labs, they all came and did PCR training at our lab. Right. So I feel that even though it was not the path I intended, I responded to the environmental needs, and I think we did a lot that has been beneficial. And that has in turn allowed the community to embrace us. When we were now doing what we considered to be our core business. Okay. So to the point where I now have people now understand when I tell them that there is such genetic variation amongst us that we might not respond the same way in terms of when drugs are given to us. So one treatment does not fit everyone. Okay. People are beginning to listen to that, from the regulators to the patients and to the medical practitioners. So I feel that the challenges we faced forced us to pivot on our knowledge of genetics and drugs, and we started to offer certain solutions that were not quite consistent with our original plan, but that allowed us the platform to be established for us to do our work. So this is how I look at how things evolved to where we are now, where we are really maybe one of the strong technical partners for the government. Whenever there are accidents and people have to be identified, we identify them. They can quickly understand the benefit. So when we are talking about genetic variation and the need for clinical trials to include people of African ancestry, the regulators like Medicines Control Authority of Zimbabwe start to listen to us. So I feel that the difficulties, they paved way to a more robust relationship, which we are now enjoying. And I think that it will be something like that for anyone who is trying to come in. They need to be flexible or to be adaptable to the local environment and ask themselves, with the knowledge I have, what can I give of immediate value? Yes. And then once you do that, you are given space and platform to do your work.
Okay. Interesting story. Has that been the same for you, Prof?
So I think, yes, I think before I go to my challenge, it's some challenges. I want to highlight, certain, because you picked on some certain elements of sort of this digression in sort of research, or in terms of how you your growth plan. Yes. Right. I think at some point, this is also another digression. I did an executive MBA. Okay. But this was necessary for me to really sort of approach these things in a systematic way. And to also, because at some point you start becoming a startup into a corporate, and now we are more corporate, and then you have to institute certain systems, certain ways don't work anymore. But coming to how we actually started, like we've introduced also like him a number of things, you understand? Like in the oncology space, like tangible people can relate to. a multiplex PCR to test for STIs, really. Okay. And, you can test usually there was only 2 cards. Usually you get the big lab before you can do Chlamydia tocomatis or Yezeria bodinata. And it goes to this. Okay. We had a panel which does 12. Okay. Simultaneously. At the same cost, even cheaper. You right? At the same cost. This is something which is actually now routine. And we have to think big labs that will say that are basically introduced to them where supplies. And what we even realized, like now we have all these things, like you can test at the same time, and says it can do that, outbreak can't, microbiome related issues really apply. Just because of the terminology, called vaginalis.
Okay.
The first time we observed it, we thought, yeah, this must be an error. And then because I'm not coming from the clinical side, and to helping research, I'm like, yeah, everybody in the Europe is saying this is a rare disease in men. It doesn't happen. Over statistics of 1,000, whatever, that happens frequency. Almost 30% of all men with urethral problems we observe actually. So it's routine in men here. It comes basically to this personalization, like we take, for instance, that it's given the same demographics, the same picture that you see there, the same prevalence patient is here.
Yes.
Now here, it should actually be a standard routine test. We even went further now, for HPV, there were drugs, the vaccines that were being given for the HPV against cervical cancer, right? The more common labs, traditional labs, were testing HPV 16, type 16 and type 18. There are many different types of HPV that can cause cervical cancer.
Right.
In Europe, type 16 and type 18 are the more popular, more prevalent types. That's what everybody was testing here. The initial vaccines were actually targeted against these two. We brought a more comprehensive, a multiplex genotyping assay for HPV. The initial one had 20 different types of HPV. Now we even have a new one which has 30 different types of HPV. Right. There are about 200 different types, of which, of course, at some point you have to get a cutoff of which ones are high risk and which ones are not really high risk. Exactly. But here, the major type, which is more than 55% of the cases, is HPV 45. So that means the first vaccine, the second one missed it until you get the non-valent one.
Yes,
finally got it.
Finally got it.
So you see the impact. And then you had, it's not even second, according to our data. Then you have HPV 33 and 35.
So you have 45.
Then 33, 35, and then you have 16. Yeah, then it starts with 16, 18 down there. And not just in cervical cancer. There's an oral cancer also. There's a similar picture. But this study we did it for UNICEF, so I can't talk about the actual numbers. But the picture, even in those cases, you understand? So it really points to, even though we sort of digressed and started looking into this, it actually gives us insights. Because a lot of things there's no baseline studies here. The baseline situation is not ours. It's either borrowed from America, it's borrowed from Europe, or it's borrowed from China. We did our own AMR study, which I was just curious, actually. Because everybody was like, there was more money in AMR. So we decided, like, okay, maybe we want to write a grant on AMR, so you need preliminary data.
Yes.
So we took a postdoc from Switzerland, a Zimbabwean, and I said, okay, introduce my people to how to do this. We're doing it in the veterinary space. Okay. We said, okay, we think this problem is coming from food animals. Yeah, because the veterinary people are basically injecting a lot of antibiotics into the cows, sheep, and whatever goats. And so we went around buying meat from supermarkets, even to abattoirs, because if you didn't want to give us, we would just go buy it from where you supplied, and then we would test it. So we had about 700 samples. Right? And then we're just looking into one class of antibiotic resistance, called the ESBLs, expanded spectrum beta-lactamases, just one class. There are many different classes. The numbers that we saw, so the situation is really bad. So we didn't publish it because we're just using as preliminary data to apply for a grant. But also we had other people like say, okay, are we right? Are we correct? Just have a look into this, and we get some people some samples, and they're like, yes, this is really that bad. And there we are now thinking of looking into other classes of resistances. Because we're looking at one resistance which is like very, very high up there. You understand? So we have sort of found our feet. And I think part of it was I'd been so long out of Zimbabwe. And then when you come, you really don't know what's going on. And also the state of knowledge, I realized here is the problem. The most problematic point is state of knowledge is because people are recycling one article. There's one publication and 50 reviews. But coming to the...
But I just wanted,
So
I just wanted to touch on something which is sort of just emerging as we are talking. That when you're coming from outside, say from the global north, of course you recognize something needs to be done at home, but actually you don't have enough knowledge of what is on the ground to shape your research or discovery question.
Okay, within that space.
And I think that this is what we probably are experiencing from what you're saying and from what I'm saying, that I came with a certain set mind.
Yeah.
I want to, to try to find drug targets and synthesize some molecules and use bioinformatics to do docking and everything.
Yes.
That is what I conceived to be the problem that needs to be solved.
Yes.
Yeah, and the genetics, I wanted to look at all the genetic variants in every gene. But when I came, I needed to be informed by the local experience what should be my research question.
Yes.
And I think most of the things we are going to be talking about are actually now how we have been evolving, now starting to answer to the problem that is in our face. For example, what really happened to us was that when we were doing the viral loads and the DNA testing in children and so forth, we now started working the HIV space, which of course is a big problem.
Yeah.
But that time there was a drug called efavirenz, which was causing, as we were going to the clinics, we hear people complaining, this drug causes us serious neuropsychiatric side effects. This is what is the problem. So how do you solve it?
Yes.
And that's when we ended up at Wilkins. We ended up doing a study and we looked at patients who were on this drug. We measured the drug concentrations. Whereas in general, the concentrations are like between 1 and 4 units. There, 50% of them were from 6 to 50, 60 units in the blood. And no wonder they were having all these neuropsychiatric side effects. Then we said, so what is happening to the genes that code for the systems that break down this drug? Because these people are failing to break it down. So we went on to sequence that particular gene. But you can see it is now being informed by what is on the And when we did that, we could see that there are genetic variants which were associated with reduced function of that enzyme system. So we then developed our first genetic test, which we called GeneDOS, which we were able to show that if people is carrying 2 variants of this particular gene, they would need maybe only 200 milligrams instead of 600.
600, okay.
And then we could show that, if they are carrying one functional, one non-functional, they might need the issue of weight and gender was important, so that women who were less than a certain weight would need 400 milligrams. And that is how we actually pushed the agenda that finally caused WHO to change the dose from 600 to 400. So I think the message I want to just sort of, for anyone who is going to join this idea of coming back and doing the research, on the onset, try to listen carefully to what is the actual problem that needs to be solved. Then you apply your knowledge and skills to solve those problems, than to pre-form the questions and the problems in your head, but let them come from the experience.
But if I'm going to put it to you, Profs, that if we look at everything that we've discussed so far and all the things that you have done, if I'm then going to say it takes a special type of African scientists to go and learn abroad, right? Want to come home and bring, that learning home and have the resilience to go through and walk through and face the headwinds.
Yeah.
Would that be an inaccurate characterization? Because to me, sitting here talking to you, I get the realization that it's not everyone who can do what you have done in terms of your career profiles, but even those who are fellow scientists, fellow researchers, not all of them can come back and set up what you have done. What would you say, Prof Samatanga?
Yeah, I think it's I think to oversimplify it before I explain, You have to be extremely good or you have to be very naive.
Yes, you can explain that. Please
Or
explain.
maybe a combination of both would work as well. I think it's difficult. The type of things we do in the European or American setup on the developed world is usually done by departments. You understand? I have a flow cytometer, I have an NGS sequencer, I have an HPLC machine. Usually in Europe, you have a department sharing an HPLC machine with a technician to manage that machine.
Okay.
Somebody's managing the sequencer, all right? I can do it because I have the knowledge to run the HPL machine. I know how to maintain it. I know how to set up the pump, whatever, the valves, to degas, everything. And then I do the same thing with the sequencing. I sit there, I do the whole library preparation and so forth. I go to do my immunoassays and I'm like, okay, this is HIV test. I train people to use this and so forth, right? And then I go to flow cytometer. I'm like, okay, the lasers are not well calibrated. I have to align the lasers. You understand? And this is safety level 3 or something. You understand? Because people can go blind. So you have to have all that kind of knowledge for you to have maybe a small staff and to be able to do it. Otherwise, you are measuring with equipment that also don't work.
Okay.
Because you are just putting things and pressing a button, and the light, maybe the lamp, all these RT PCRs or whatever, they use lamps or lasers and whatever, and some machines, especially chemistry analyze, the lamp might just be working at half its efficiency. How do you know? You're a biologist,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You don't know that. What you know is how to do, a PCR reaction. But I also have to do the PCR reaction after fixing the machines. So, I think I got lucky because, I did my bachelor's in biochemical engineering, and then I did more into biophysics, and then actually my professorship was in physics. I developed my own software, my machines, but it's try to make it sort of economically manageable.
Okay.
It could be manageable within a substantial amount of money, and you just get experts to do it. But here's the thing, life sciences is a capital intensive area.
Okay.
You need to pay a lot of money to get the equipment, and the equipment, the returns take a lot of time. And while you are waiting for the return, even the equipment you are not quite used, it just can't sit there. If it rusts, it's much more expensive to maintain.
Maintain it, yes.
You understand? And then you train some people, but whoever you train maybe wants to go to America now. Because in Zimbabwe, I think the biggest challenge is skilled labor. The universities are not producing students that we actually need. They can't do anything. I can say it, no, not without being offensive or anything. They can't do. They have they can't even sterilize. Everything you do in a lab, in a life science lab, is as clean, it's as good as the water. If the water is not clean, it doesn't matter how smart the project was. It's contaminated stuff.
Yes.
So if you can sterilize stuff, purify water, check if the water doesn't whatever, then you're not almost of no use at all. It's the fundamentals. Because I think the problem is now the students have like all these big words. NGS, I want to do sequencing. Why? You understand? Can you even justify to a medical aid practitioner to go to CMAS and say like, we should sequence people, and they ask you why? But the question of relevance comes back. It is relevant, but do they understand the relevance and contextualize it?
And can they explain it?
So you have that. And then you have to run the lab, you have to maintain all these things, you have to deal with governmental regulatory issues, and you have to deal with, one of the most cowboyish moments I've done is trying to do accounting in Zig that is inflating at an extremely high rate. I mean,
So you became an accountant.
that's why I did my EMBA, so that I become, it's just made of numbers. You understand? Now you don't even need an accountant because AI can do that very well. It's a kind of rules and then you clean up. But you have to learn it. And then you still need the accountant to make sure whatever you have done is done properly, right? But still inflationary environments, how do you know you're doing well? Because it's reported in Zig, right? And now it's changed. It's not the new currency anymore. So it's very difficult. The licenses, I think he has made better success with collaboration with government than I have. I think I've tried some collaboration, and I think at some point I just gave up. Not because they were wrong, or because I was wrong, because we just didn't quite understand each other. I think this is exactly. It's a matter of just understanding and communication and pace. Government, I think, can do really solid thing, but it's very slow.
Okay.
But at the same time, you cannot do any impactful thing in any country that is really wide-ranging without government.
Yes.
You understand? So it's like you can still push, but you still keep trying, because for you to have scale and national impact, you have that. Of course, now we are setting up in Zambia as well. We find it much easier, actually, than my entrance to Zimbabwe, but also because I think we have had a lot of experience here. So we are now simultaneously going to Zambia and Mozambique now, because I think our interest, Zimbabwe was like, you set up in a country you know best.
Yes.
I would never set up in, no matter how stable the African country might be called. If it's not mine, I don't know where the capital city is, who's what, I would never do that.
Well, yes.
Yeah. But it's not like Zimbabwe is the most economically rewarding country. We have a very small population. You understand? We have 16 million people. You understand? If I go to Tanzania, I have 60 million people. Yes. As a private sector company, this is a bigger market.
It's a bigger market. Okay.
You understand? But then you are here, you're patriotic, you like your country, you want to develop, you want to contribute to the whatever, but you also want to reach the bigger market, because this is just to say, I would do research for Zimbabwe alone. I think it's very short-sighted.
Okay. So you have to expand it.
You have to expand it.
Yeah. Just to build up on some of those incredible accounts you have given, is this market thing.
Yeah. Yes.
When you look into the health sector, the drugs, the vaccines, the diagnostics and everything, you will find that a major part of it is through donor funded.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if you come up with your diagnostic test, the ones on the market are all being funded externally.
External, yes.
So your client is actually not even the hospital or the local government. It is a funder who is in Europe, who has to agree that your diagnostic test should be used. Our funds should be used to have your test work on these patients. Because when you come amongst our people, because of the economy, very few people already in Zimbabwe, probably less than 10% are on medical aid. And the rest are not on the medical aid. They have to do out of pocket. But they're not on medical aid because they don't have a lot of money.
Yes.
So whatever they can pay from out of pocket might not be able to afford the kind of tests we are trying to develop or solutions we're trying to develop. So the issue is, how do you navigate from a business perspective a sustainability model in a country where most of the people have no capacity to purchase the solutions you come up with? So this is one thing anyone needs to continuously think about, the market. To the point where some people have started to think that, well, should you probably be developing products that are of interest with global north? Who can purchase those?
We should.
And then you can use that kind of money, like in a Robin Hood model, to build capacity locally.
Sure.
Okay.
So if it is in cancer, you will know that locally there might not be many cancer patients who are going to buy your medicines.
Yes.
But you know that in Sweden or another developed country, they would buy. But your company is registered here.
Yes.
And so you bring more capacity and finance into the country. So that's one area which we continue to struggle with. In terms of who will buy the solutions. Even if we go to clinical trials, conducting a clinical trial is very expensive.
Yeah.
And yet the product, when it comes out, who is actually going to use and pay for it?
Yes.
So if you try to do a clinical study here, it's most unlikely that your people will be the first beneficiaries of that product because they will not afford it.
Yes.
And it goes to the issue of HIV. What happened with HIV, that when the drugs were being discovered, as soon as they came up with a better one, they would now downgrade the other one to Africa.
Yes.
And then they use this one. And then another one new comes, then you keep getting the ones which are not so optimal now. But we are crying or demanding a situation where we have access like anybody else to the best medicines.
Yes.
But the question is, can we afford them?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we are coming, I guess I want to ask, because there's the elephant in the room, which is, where is the money, affordability, sustainability, all this talking about industry and the life sciences ecosystem.
Yes.
It's going to come down to the money and And I'm glad you're both here to then say a lot of what you've also mentioned, some of the challenges, brain drain, access to equipment and skills, stuff, is also to do with the money.
Yeah.
That how does Africa successfully compete globally in this space? And as we're talking about setting up in African countries, because part of me is thinking, what stops a large pharma company from saying, Prof Samatanga, we love what you're doing. Come and work with us, but work in the global north.
Yeah.
Right? What stops that from happening?
Well, I think probably what stops that is like I've lived there. Now, if I hadn't, I'd be motivated to. Okay. You understand? I've set up life there. I've set up. So I've lived there. I can go there whenever I please. But it is that privilege. You should call it what it is. To actually have been there, to see what is there, and to be able to juxtapose and see it with what we have. That you say, you know what, I've seen it. It's not what I want.
Okay.
Yeah. You understand? Because if you've never seen it, how do you know it's not what you want? You understand? You can't just denigrate it or whatever because you have not seen it. All right? So I thought, coming back was, my impact. What I was doing when I was a professor in Leipzig, I was in a theoretical physics department. Quite a lot of, soft metaphysics. It's very theoretical. So my students, I'll be teaching them about maybe DNA. I'll be like, okay, we describe DNA as a worm, and then we basically try to have models of how DNA can move through solution. Yes. I could even write equations about how, honey, if I put a bicycle in honey, how it could move. I like how the whole dynamics, even pain, like it's very fundamental. You understand? It's very impactful, don't get me wrong. But you can't relate to, especially come from Zimbabwe, you're thinking like, I could have more impact, which is more immediate returns. Okay. Right? So coming from the money, I think I tried, initially with naivety included in terms of approach, because, I had no benchmark. I approached a number of organizations, even Illumina was giving money for sequencers then. I approached some embassies, because I was coming from Germany. I was like, as a German person, can you, I have written to some people. That's what I was like, this route doesn't work. Okay. Many people are doing it the wrong way. You understand? I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying, from my experience, it was frustrating, right? And no one, what I understood, no one wants to fund something that is not yet set up.
Right.
No one will give you money for a building.
No.
Okay.
They want to give you money for some reagents after you've bought the instrument and have paid the guy and the electricity and everything else, but the overheads are so high. You understand? So that was I felt like, no one gives development support.
Okay, development of funding.
Development of funding. So the whole reason, maybe I come back to why this was called a Biotech Institute. The idea, this was supposed to be the first institute of a university. Okay. Not me running all the research. Different PIs come with their own research. I think this is still the direction we're going to take. Okay. You understand? People like another postdoc would come, right? Get their own bench, set up their own research, get their own funding, do their own thing. That has nothing to do with me. They do their own thing. The next person comes, set up whatever they want to do. If you have your own money, you get to call the shot on your own research. Yes, you just budget for shared equipment maintenance. That is still the goal that we want to actually register as a university, which we might do in this year, but only offering postgraduate, master's and PhD, and very few people. I think the reason why maybe also comes because the life sciences industry hasn't developed is because we don't have private universities in the life science sector. Our educational system from primary school and secondary school is really good because you have very competitive private schools. Yes. Now, if the University of Zimbabwe, the NASTI, or any other public university have no competition, we will never improve. You understand? So that is very important. And also because you need focused institute. If you take the California Institute of Technology, it's not a big university. It's really small. They are tailored to what they know.
Yes.
If we set up our own university, we will not be doing agriculture research. That's not our expertise. You understand?
Yeah,
So
but it goes back to your point that, when you came,
Yeah.
you needed to be the technician.
yes.
Yes.
You needed to be the one who sits and writes the research concept.
Yes.
You needed
Yes.
to actually, do the samples coming from patients.
Exactly.
So I think we are trying to be superhuman
Yeah.
Oh.
in this kind of, and I think that our counterparts
Yeah.
in the global north
It's easier.
do not have the kind of setting we have. And sometimes when you talk to them, they will tell you it's not possible what you're trying to do, because they cannot understand how you can stretch yourself across such a range.
Yeah.
But we find ourselves in that situation.
Yes.
The question is it also contributing to our failure to make the breakthroughs we could make in our areas of specialty?
Okay.
He's an RNA person, but
Yes.
for the past 2 years, he has diversified.
And I've done too much admin and less research.
Yes.
So I feel that if we are not likely to try to do what the global north did, because that's a historical process,
Yeah.
and you don't necessarily have to repeat it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there are some kind of radical developments that have been happening in the AI machine learning space.
Yes.
That I feel we should, bring on board to help us build our case
Yes.
for transformation that can happen in our lifetimes or in our generation. Otherwise, if we try to sort of say, well, German did stage 1, stage 2 and everything, and we try to do it, it will not work.
Yeah.
And I think that has been one of the failures of efforts
Okay.
to reproduce what has happened in the global north here.
Yes.
We should not be taking that route. We should just radicalize the process.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to add one point on this AI. I think in my company, come 2027, and you really don't know how to use AI, you're of no use.
You're of no use.
You're obsolete. And I think I mentioned this to them. I think this has enabled us to do a lot of things quite efficiently.
Okay.
And I think we need to embark on it. Yeah, I understand. Of course, not to miss the understanding, so that people just automate stuff and they don't have understanding. We will still assess the understanding, but we have to integrate it and put it in there for productivity. For productivity, not for to just mask your understanding.
Okay.
You understand?
Okay.
But this is without that. No. This is going to be the future.
True.
Even for programming, for whatever you name it, it's something that even if we talk about clinical trials,
Yes.
one of the most exhausting processes, at least maybe less here, but in the global north, compliance,
Yes.
paperwork, and all these things, and regulations, rules. Are you conforming? Are you non-conforming? And so forth. This it can do very well.
Yes, it can.
And I think if by the rate at which it's going and the competition it's going, by the end of the year, very, very well, even better than humans can do. As long, I'm sorry to say, it's maybe something that many people don't want to hear. As long as you give it a proper database of your benchmarks.
Yes.
These are my rules. These are what I want. And your rules are well explained to what are the parameters and the boundaries of whatever. And then it will be, even MRCZ, I'm sorry to say, the same thing could assess whether something is ethically compliant
Yes.
very quickly. People don't have to wait for so long. Of course, you need up to a point whereby we have more trust in it. You still need a human touch to say, yeah, okay, this is okay. You understand? But the donkey work, I think it can do very well. And this it has already to be ingrained, I think, for clinical work, for whatever, it can accelerate the process. We are too slow, and it's frustrating. And I think that's one of the things that private companies, and this is what I have to say, there's been no life sciences sector, even clinical trials, drug development, without a private sector.
Okay.
In all the developing countries, all this development of these drugs is led by private companies. In Switzerland, there's Novartis, there's Roche, there's whoever. In America, there's Merck, there's whoever. They are all private.
But the important thing to that, which we are missing sometimes, is that those private companies in the global north, they have full support of their government.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So when the government of, say, X country says we are the leaders in vaccine manufacturing, and everything, they take with them the person from private sector company.
Yes.
And they are good in automobile. They take the person from the company.
Yeah.
And they create an enabling environment for these companies. I still feel that in our setting in Africa in general, we are trying to evolve from a situation where private and public sectors are almost competing or fighting each other. Where there's no complement, not understanding that the private sector needs to achieve support of the government, budget up to which they might not be there as barriers, but there's able. So we have to think that you will back to just like yourself. At this point, because it's also needed if a particular company is in shop, there is water bank. Government investment sector also is good. See, they don't know the capacity. So remember, it may not be there.
People forget that Harvard, for instance, all the Ivy League, Harvard, its contribution is completely private. That's why it's a private investor. Even though it has all these billion-dollar endowments, even Elon Musk and SpaceX, it's private. He's saying he's doing that, but it's all government subsidized. So and I have not received a dollar.
So let's then bring it back to then say, if you were to narrow down, what are the priorities that then move us forward to this well-functioning life sciences ecosystem that we're talking about? If you had to give maybe 2 or 3 priority areas, where would you?
I think since we've mentioned this, it's not like I would say it's number one, but I would think since it's a very critical point, you understand, government support is necessary.
Yes.
Yeah. And I would put number 2, regulation.
Okay. That's
because
government.
It's also government. I think let's put it there because I've always seen like their regulators want to regulate things that they don't know or things that hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
Like they want to regulate maybe RNA as a drug or whatever is a GM. What is like, allow things to develop and have informed and participate. I think I would want him, if there's regulation of pharmacogenomics or whatever type in that space, he's sort of the leading person in that space.
Yes.
He should be involved.
Okay.
We've done more to the biotech space. We also was saying, So I think the government and the regulation, I think it's important. I think that comes to funding. But funding is two-way. It's government or it's as well private sector. I think banks don't offer. There's no lending culture here.
Yeah.
You understand? All I've done, all the machines I have bought, including the cars, whatever, were cash. I mean,
and your counterpart is not buying the Novasec.
It's loaned. It's placed.
Yes.
And you have to buy, and then you don't have money now to buy the reagents.
Yes.
So most of the equipment you see around is just lying there idle. Because the last reagents they bought were when they got the grant, and when that grant finished, that was the last time the experiment did. But just to add, one of the things you touched on before, which can have many solutions, for me, it is the lack of skilled manpower.
Yeah, that's the West.
It's not about the number of universities we have. It's not about the number of graduates we have. It is the quality of training.
Yeah, it's bad.
Okay. And the skills the people come out with. The situation is really bad.
It's bad. I think people are even scared. Also the culture.
I know people always cite, but the Zimbabweans are doing great in the USA. No. They are in Germany. Of course, when you read it, those are just a few people. Those are people who, whether the university is bad or good, they will still be outstanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
So those don't reflect the quality of the system.
Okay.
There are just a few individuals who could survive anyway.
I understand. Okay.
So for me, I think we had tried to start tackling it with this so-called Education 5.0. There was a clear realization that the people are coming out without any skills. But the question is, what needs to be done at those universities to be able to train the people who are going to be useful for industry?
Yeah.
But if you are going, like you have mentioned, some of the universities you go to, you see the lab. The labs are poorer than some high school labs.
Yes.
And these people that's coming out with their first class degree in biochemistry or engineering or some sort. So I think the problem is that we need to first, these are public universities.
Yes.
They need to be empowered accordingly to produce useful people.
Yes.
But we need to encourage private universities to be formed.
Yes.
Because private universities have a very clear mandate. They need to be able to say the people whom we have produced have all started companies or are the ones who are preferably employed.
Exactly.
That's how they get more
people. More people in.
So I think that is a huge gap. And I know that we need to be brave enough and courageous enough to spell it out, because people will say, no, we are very educated, we are this and that.
Skills.
You know, it's okay, you can read the book and remember everything.
But that's not innovation.
That's not what we are talking about. So I feel that is a gap, which I feel that at least here the government had understood it. But the question is, are we doing enough to rectify it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, look, I think we can continue talking.
We have now
These issues. I didn't even get a chance to really dig into, biotech and things like that, or even apes. But as we wrap up, I want you to kind of give us your final thoughts on this, this transitioning into, from basic research and clinical trials into industry and that life sciences ecosystem. What would be some of your thoughts as we wrap up, Prof Samatanga?
Yeah, I think we have to sort of, I'll say, not move away, because clinical trials is very important. But we can't just be sending samples out for someone else to analyze.
Okay.
You understand? It's data. It needs to be protected, right? And by so doing, you also kill jobs, you kill an industry. I think a whole ecosystem, you have also the pre-discovery and the discovery phases.
Yes.
It's not that Africans can innovate or don't have things that are innovative. I mean, our grandmothers have innovated very, very well. All the traditional medicines.
Yes.
But we have not even, we have already have a starting point.
Yes.
Right? But we do not even have the capacity to turn that into a pill. That's what you want. That's what the Europeans want. And you don't need to access like even 10% of the European or the American market to recover your returns. Even 0.1%, some pill that is well known to do whatever, and you put it in some community trust. I don't know, whatever it's community knowledge, but you still turn it into something. So we have innovated, right? But we just haven't sort of paced our innovation with the times. Herbal concoctions, they only go so far, right? So I think we need sort of to change our mindset. The knowledge is there, we can involve, we need the capacity, we need people to push and people to understand what are you targeting. It shouldn't just be about Zimbabwe, right? We should not aim to be just saying, okay, subsistence innovation.
Okay. That's an interesting term. Subsistence innovation.
Yeah. No, really, I think it's a term that people would understand. We did subsistence farming.
Yes.
And then we later moved to commercial farming.
Yes.
We need commercial research, commercial development. We don't need subsistence. Because you export something, you reduce your own imports, you export, you get foreign currency. I think the impact that people see, if people really sit down and say how much money they spend on life science related products, directly and indirectly, even from the insurance side. I think the insurance companies are somebody that would actually need to drag in. If somebody could actually harness money from the private sector. If there were some people bold enough to say, you know what, it might be very important to sequence, to do a PCR. You actually don't even to sequence a PCR for certain drug toxicity genes. for a cancer patient before you put them on chemo.
Yes.
The sequence would be like this case, this patient will not benefit from chemo, cost you $300. Chemo costs you $2,000 a session.
Yes.
It's simple maths.
Yes.
In Europe, they're doing that. So some of it, maybe it's just not the message getting through.
Okay.
Or people not understanding. So you just go on chemo, but there is a way to tell whether you benefit from chemo.
the best.
Yeah. So there is that.
Also, it is really, really, really fundamental. And then people to understand you can. There's all this thing like bioeconomy, circular economy, all these things. You create a lot of trust and you have a lot of doubts in those schools. Plus, you have a lot of doubt info. You have another knowledge space. You move that in the relation. You have to start to see. You have to report you got serious study economy. You just could not stay over by you. Can't to me there.
The crisis. That really in the open, but people could not quite tell whether some of the vaccines had actually something inside or not. You understand? But we lack such capacity, so it's not. And even if you do a clinical trial, you do a drug, you do a vaccine, you need to test.
Yes.
Is there something in this? You have to develop quality systems. You understand? You can't just manufacture it however you please. Mm-hmm. But also, I think we also have to be bold. You understand? How difficult is it to kill a virus? Just boil the thing and then you give it something like this is attenuated or dead. That's it. That's it. Just find a way to kill it. And then you inject it into someone and like, nah. Seems to be working. I'm not eliciting. It's an experiment. It's not a sure process. But I think you need maybe just the third parties or some partners to just put some money for research and just say, okay, just try. Okay. Part of it is just to be bold and risk. That's why not private companies or private sectors is usually more innovative than public. It's not because the people, they are smarter. But is that they take more risk?
They take more risks.
I'm just going to try it.
And to you, Prof Masimirembwa, what's final thoughts on this subject?
So over the years, I've been operating in this environment, discussing these things, is that I've asked myself, where should we start?
Yeah.
Because everything looks difficult to do, or it has its own challenges. But I've sort of admired some of the initiatives that are popping up. They are like Biotech Institute, which is doing amazing stuff. If I go to Ghana, there's also another young professor called Yao, who has called Yamache. You go around in Kenya and everywhere. They are sprouting, signals that this can be done on the continent. So first, I think we are overcoming the idea that it's not possible. We are now believing it's possible.
It's possible. Yes.
But now, how do we do it? I believe that we need now to create an ecosystem of all these emerging potentials.
Right.
Because by themselves, they risk dying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is to create an ecosystem, a collaborative framework, where we are now saying those who are skewed to the fundamental science, are they generating IP?
Exactly.
Which we can jump onto, so that then you also thrive.
Yes.
So a professor at the University of Zimbabwe now licenses out a certain technology.
Yes.
He takes it up in his company. He tries to come up with a pilot product, whether it's a vaccine. And then ACRN then says we can do the clinical trial.
Yes.
So, and then you are going to people who are now going to manufacture, scaling up that manufacturing. So there is an understanding that is a value chain.
Yes.
But right now, it is still not clear that interdependencies or that ecosystem. So I feel that we are at the point where we need to put a lot of emphasis to discuss it, to exploit, to look at those partnerships that are important, and not to just sort of develop in isolation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then when we do that, I feel that if, of course, this area is well known for failure rates, which are very high. That's why you need to be bold and courageous and so forth. But I think that whilst it doesn't mean you have to produce a product, but you create competence in the value chain, so that competence can be used for any other services that it can offer. So it can still sustain itself the way we have been doing now. Because without offering all these kind of diagnostic tests and so forth, we might actually end up closing. But we are still pursuing all those bold ideas of coming up with some kind of new medication for a particular disease common to us or abroad. But number two, let's not think too much inward.
Yeah.
Let's think about the global market.
Exactly.
Because we have tended to look inward and sort of say, because you have a private desire to serve your people. So you end up sort of investing everything you do. But if you start thinking that, well, the best market for a particular eye disease is in Finland. And I think these Finnish people are going to pay a good dollar.
For it. Yeah, exactly.
Let's come up with an innovation for them. So let's be known for finding solutions for the global community. And the way I've sort of found it appealing is my work in genomic medicine, where I have now over the years realized that the genomic diversity of African populations is a resource, is an asset. Which can actually inform the understanding of biology globally. If you are studying cancer and you want a particular treatment for cancer, a patient in Zimbabwe will have so much genetic variation around that disease. You will understand the range of expression of that particular disease. When you come up with a medication, you will also have covered how bad it can be and how good it can be. But you will not find that in a very homogeneous population of a European country. So I'm believing that we are sitting on an asset which we can really monetize. That's why I'm very glad that a number of countries are now refusing to just let go their biological assets. But it's not enough to stop letting go. It's important to invest and sort of say, how do we extract that value and monetize it, but also for the global good, because we ultimately want to have impact in health, but we also need to be sustainable. So that's how
I think it's a key line. I think just to sum up part of it, I just want to re-summarize part of it is life science. I think I'll re-express it in a maybe, it's not just research. It's a business.
It is a business.
You see, I think because when you talk to a public official or somebody and they think it's just research, they're like, this one, it's a business.
It's a business.
Switzerland, where I live, is a large chunk of its GDP is life sciences.
So to sum up, I think, thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast. One of the things I find talking to great minds like yourself is you come and you think you can talk about something for 30 minutes or 1 hour and exhaust it. And in that 30 minutes and 1 hour, you find 20 different topics that arise, and but we've got limited time, but this is the start of a conversation, and I'm so glad you're part of it. We hope you will agree to come back on a follow-up issue, because one of my desires is we unearth and then we suggest the solutions, the how, the practicality of how do we, all this that we're talking about, how do we actually bring it to come to pass. So I really want to thank you for your time. I know that we didn't give you a lot of time to think about the decision to come to the podcast, but I think the stories are brilliant, and I'm hoping that a year from now, if we look back at this conversation, we can say that at least as a network, Africa Clinical Research Network, we helped pushed a little bit of what you have suggested here forward. And it's interesting, our next podcast or so, we want to talk about this issue of financing and funding. So I like the concept that you brought up, that, it's a business, we have to talk sustainability and the money. So we want to go in to talk to people who are in that funding space and hear what they have to say. So thank you again for being part of our podcast.
Thank you for having us.
My professorship ends here.
Thanks for having us here. Thanks a lot.
That's good. Thank you.
No, that's good. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.